Right now, there are players with $40,000 Star Citizen hangars who literally can't remember the last time they flew half their ships. We're talking about citizens with Carracks gathering dust, Mercury Star Runners that haven't left the pad in months, and F8 Sea Lightnings that are somehow less useful than a basic Gladius. The most expensive ships in the game have become the most ignored, and there's a fascinating psychological reason why this happens to almost every serious player who's been in the verse for more than a year. Look, you've been there. You own ships that you absolutely love looking at, but when was the last time you actually flew them? Maybe 3 patches ago? The Star Citizen community just had this massive discussion about unused ships, and the responses were honestly pretty eye-opening. What's wild is that the ships people are ignoring aren't the cheap starter ships. They're the premium, role-specific vessels that cost hundreds of dollars. And if you've got more than 5 ships in your hangar, you're probably doing the same thing without even realizing it. The ships you thought would define your Star Citizen experience are sitting there like expensive art pieces. So what we're talking about here is hangar queens, ships that exist purely as expensive decorations in your virtual garage. In Star Citizen terms, these are fully functional, often beautiful spacecraft that players own but never actually use for gameplay. Think of it like owning a Ferrari that you never drive because your Honda Civic is just more practical for everything you actually need to do. The problem runs deeper than Star Citizen's current gameplay loops not supporting specialized roles these ships were designed for. Most players think this is just about missing features, but the reality is more complex. Even when those features arrive, many of these ships will still collect dust because they're fundamentally over-engineered for the game we actually play versus the game we imagined we'd play. The Mercury Star Runner represents the perfect example of a ship designed for gameplay that exists more in our imagination than in reality. Everyone talks about waiting for data running, but that's missing the real issue. The MSR isn't just waiting for its intended profession, it's actively counterproductive at everything else players actually do day to day. Those beautiful server rooms and hidden compartments, they're dead weight when you're hauling cargo between Crusader and Microtech. That maze-like interior with multiple decks and that infamous crawl space, it becomes a nightmare when you just want to get to the cockpit quickly for the third bounty run of the evening. You've probably experienced this. You think, hey, let me dust off the MSR, show her some love, and 15 minutes later you're running through corridors, waiting for elevators, getting frustrated with the cargo lift, while other players in Cutlass Blacks are already on their third profitable run. The ship has gorgeous industrial design and incredible character, but in patch 4.3.2's reality, character doesn't pay for component upgrades or ship insurance. The recent cargo handling improvements made this disparity even more pronounced. Efficiency trumps everything, and the MSR represents the opposite of efficient gameplay flow. Actually, quick pause. If you're nodding along because you've got your own fleet of expensive hangar decorations, you might want to hit that subscribe button. Not because you have to, but because misery loves company, and we're about to dive deep into why your wallet hurts and your ships don't fly. Plus, someone needs to document this beautiful disaster we call fleet management. Now, be brutally honest with yourself. How many ships do you own that you chose based on their potential rather than their current utility? Maybe you've got a Carrack waiting for a deep space exploration, or a 600 eye-gathering dust until its promised rework finally materializes, or an SRV that you've used exactly twice since buying it. The Star Citizen community loves to say, it'll be incredible when X feature drops, but we've been saying variations of that for years while flying the same 3 reliable ships. The real issue is what behavioral economists would call role rigidity. Ships like the Carrack, 600i, and Starfarer were designed to excel at hyper-specific tasks that either don't exist yet or are poorly implemented in ways that make them feel unrewarding. But the deeper problem is this. Even versatile ships become hangar queens when they are not versatile enough for the actual gameplay loops that feel satisfying in 2025. Take the F8 Sea Lightning. On paper, it's the ultimate heavy fighter with military-grade components and devastating firepower. In practice, most players never touch it because when you want to do combat, you're probably doing bounty hunting chains. And bounty hunting means you want to get there fast, kill efficiently, and move to the next target before the dopamine hit fades. The F7. A Hornet does that better with superior agility. The Guardian does that better with its quantum dampener utility. A well-equipped Gladius does that better because it's faster between targets and cheaper to operate when you inevitably take damage. You've probably spent 45 minutes in premium fighters trying to complete a single VHRT because the quantum drive felt sluggish. The target was in a debris field where the ship's size worked against it, and by the time you finished, you realized you could have done 3 bounties in something more nimble. These ships aren't bad, they're optimized for large-scale fleet combat scenarios that don't exist in our current solo-focused gameplay reality. This psychological trap becomes crystal clear during events like the recent Blockade Runner missions. Picture this. You're sitting in your hangar at Everest Harbor, looking at your fleet, trying to decide what to take. You've got that beautiful 400i with premium paint, absolutely stunning ship that cost you real money because you believed in the vision. But you know, if you take it, you'll spend half your time dealing with its quirks instead of focusing on the mission objectives and actually having fun. So you grab your trusty Cutlass Black instead. Basic, reliable, gets the job done without drama. And you know what happens? You have a blast. No waiting for elevators, no navigating maze-like interiors, just pure gameplay flow. Meanwhile, your 400i sits there looking gorgeous, and you feel this weird guilt creeping in, like you're betraying this expensive ship you were so excited to own. That's the moment you realize we're all doing this, choosing function over form, even when we desperately want our expensive choices to feel justified. CIG has clearly learned from this pattern, and they're designing newer ships with a completely different philosophy. Look at the Zeus series, the Asgard, the Paladin. These ships are built around current gameplay loops first, with specialization as a secondary concern rather than the primary selling point. They're not asking you to wait for some mythical future patch to justify their existence. But there's a tactical insight that changes everything. Stop feeling guilty about your hangar queens and start thinking strategically about them as long-term investments in gameplay experiences that haven't fully materialized yet. That unused Carrack isn't just waiting for exploration mechanics. It's your mobile command center for the Pyro system when travel times become measured in real hours rather than minutes. That dusty MSR? When engineering gameplay comes online and ship survival becomes more complex, those redundant systems and hidden compartments might make it the most survivable solo ship in genuinely dangerous space. The psychological shift is reframing these ships not as daily drivers that need to justify themselves every session, but as specialized tools for specific situations that create memorable experiences rather than efficient credit grinding. Keep your Cutlass or Asgard for routine work, but understand that when the right situation emerges, you've got the perfect tool waiting in your hangar. The Reddit discussion that highlighted this phenomenon had over 500 comments, and the pattern was unmistakable. Everyone has that one ship they love but never fly. The 600i waiting for its rework, the Hull C that barely functions reliably, the SRV with no practical mission structure. But what's fascinating is this: the players who express the most satisfaction with their fleets aren't the ones with the most ships. They're the ones who've made peace with the fact that some ships are investments in future gameplay experiences, not solutions to current problems. There's wisdom in the community saying, we don't have a ship problem, we have a gameplay loop shortage that's slowly being filled. Your actionable strategy for managing hangar queens effectively starts with brutal honesty. Audit your fleet and categorize ships by actual usage: weekly workhorses, monthly specialists, and quarterly hangar queens. For your weekly ships, optimize loadouts completely and master their systems inside and out. For monthly specialists, keep them maintained, but don't stress about perfect optimization since you're not using them for credit grinding. For the hangar queens, establish specific trigger conditions for when you'll use them. The Carrack comes out for multi-day exploration when Pyro drops. The MSR gets used when cargo security becomes a real concern. The 600i handles VIP transport missions once they're properly implemented. Having clear use cases prevents buyer's remorse and gives you something concrete to anticipate. And honestly, sometimes taking your favorite hangar queen out for a pure joyride is worth it, even when it's not optimal. The emotional connection to your ships matters more than spreadsheet efficiency for long-term enjoyment. So what's your most expensive hangar queen, and what specific gameplay scenario would get you flying it regularly? Drop a comment and share your situation, because understanding these patterns helps the entire community make better fleet decisions. If this helped you feel better about your ship choices and gave you a framework for thinking about future purchases, hit that like button. The psychology behind our fleet decisions reveals a lot about how we actually play versus how we think we want to play. Thanks for watching, citizens! Remember, the best ship isn't always the most expensive or the most specialized. Sometimes it's simply the one that gets you into the gameplay flow state where you lose track of time because you're actually having fun rather than fighting systems. The ships that become legends in your personal Star Citizen story are usually the ones you fly, not the ones you admire. See you in the verse and fly what brings you joy.